Hello, everybody, and welcome to my second college football show live. Sorry, we're a little bit late this morning, a couple minutes behind. As you could probably tell, a few technical difficulties with the banner, but a shout out to Jake at Snake Sports Talk Show. I am hooked up with the Spotlight Sports Network. Jake is a part of that. I am happy to be with them. I am Sports Guy Chris, coming on again for my second live college football show. I've got you covered with all the previews for tomorrow's big games and a quick rundown of the college football playoff rankings as they currently stand. So again, Sports Guy Chris here, college football show, tied in with the Spotlight Sports Network, of which Snake Sports Talk Show is a part of. Happy to be with these guys, but there's a lot to cover. We actually have 11 games involving teams in the top 25 tomorrow. So I'm going to jump right in and start going through those games right away. We're going to start right at the top with the number one team in the country, Alabama. They're 9-0. They're looking to wrap up another perfect regular season. They are at Arkansas tomorrow. It's an early game. They are a massive, massive favorite, 32-point favorite for the Crimson Tide. So, I don't see any surprises here. Arkansas has been improved this year. Despite 3-6 record, that is actually much better than they've been able to do the last few years. So, hats off to them. But that being said, I don't think they have a chance tomorrow against Alabama. The Crimson Tide should keep rolling right along and get to 10-0. I believe they will be in the college football playoff no matter what happens next week. So, as far as the SEC title game goes against Florida, as far as the 32-point spread, guys, whenever it's that high, that's just something I'm not really going to touch. I think Alabama wins the game comfortably tomorrow. 32 points, maybe a little too steep for my liking, but nonetheless, I expect Alabama to roll. So moving on, but staying in the SEC, we've got one other game involving an SEC team, two other games involving ranked SEC teams. Georgia will be on the road facing Missouri. Missouri snuck in as the number 25 team in the college football rankings this past week. They're 5-3. That might be a little generous of the playoff committee to have them ranked. Georgia's going in as a 13-point favorite on the road. Yeah, this has the makings to be an interesting game. I think it should be pretty good. Georgia hasn't necessarily blown the socks off of anybody this year. They've got one nice win on their resume. They took care of Auburn with relative ease earlier in the season. But, other than that, they did struggle against Kentucky. They have struggled with a few other teams. So Mississippi State 2 weeks ago as well. So I'm not sure about the 13 here. If you have an opportunity, you can get on an alternate spread. I would take Missouri for plus 17 on an alternate spread if you've got that available. So 13 might still be a little steep, but I would gobble up a couple more points if that opportunity is there. So I expect Georgia to win the game, but they could have a few troubles. So I just don't think Missouri is good enough defensively to be able to get it done. So the other game in the SEC is a big one. It features Florida. The Gators have already wrapped up their spot in the SEC title game where they will play Alabama next week. They are hosting LSU. And, obviously it's a down year for the Tigers, not quite the same as it has been. LSU is just 3-5. They're coming off a complete annihilation at home. They were blown out by Alabama last week. It was a pretty brutal blowout. So it's clear LSU is not the same team as last year. Of course, they lost all that great talent to the draft. They had several key players opt out as well at the beginning of the season. So, LSU is just not the same team. I expect Florida to get it done. They're 23-point favorite. I think LSU can cover that spread. Florida, the last few weeks has kind of started a little bit slow and then pulled away from teams that they should beat handily in the second half. I could see that trend continuing again tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if this game was a little closer than expected in the first half, with Florida pulling away, getting a couple touchdowns and pulling away as this game goes on in the second half. So, but again, I don't see any surprises here. I think Florida wins and they kind of maintain their spot at number 6 and puts themselves in position to get in the college football playoff if they could upset Alabama in the SEC title game next week. So that wraps up the 3 big games in the SEC. Moving along to the Big Ten, there is, 2 games this week to keep an eye on. The first one involves my Wisconsin Badgers, who, of course, struggled against Indiana at home last week. The Hoosiers are a good football team. Wisconsin struggled for their second game in a row to move the ball, to really have sustained drives, any of that kind of stuff. They lost 16-6. So their last 2 games, the Indiana game last week, they scored 6. 2 weeks before that, they were at Northwestern, and they lost that game 17-7. So the Badgers' last 2 games, they've scored 7 points and 6 points. Iowa's got a pretty good defense, too. This game is at Iowa. Surprisingly, as of last night, Wisconsin was a 1-point favorite. So you scratch your head a little bit at that one, because basically the way Vegas does it, guys, if they feel teams are even, usually the team at home will get a 2 or 3 point spread in their favor. If Vegas views the teams as being even, that 2 or 3 points is usually the buffer for the home team. So Wisconsin being a 1-point favorite actually tells me Vegas is favoring them as being the better team. That would mean if this game was at Camp Randall, it'd be more of, Wisconsin a 4 or 5 point spread. So that one's surprising, guys. I'm not going to touch that one. Wisconsin has just not looked good offensively. They have yet to be able to play 2 games in a row in consecutive weeks all season long. This will be the first time where they're in action in back-to-back weeks. Maybe that continuity will help. They looked fantastic at the beginning of the year, and then, no quarterback to practice for 21 days, etc. It's still interesting, though, when you're dealing with, as much as the Badgers have struggled to score the last couple of games, them being on the road. Iowa's ranked number 16 by the playoff committee. They're 5-2. So, I get it. As of late, the Badgers have had some success against the Hawkeyes. Still, I'm surprised by that 1-point spread. That one I'm not going to touch. That one is a little bit of, like I said, it's just a surprise for me based on the way Wisconsin's offense has struggled to move the ball the last few weeks. So if you want to bet, that's almost a toss-up right now. I mean, Iowa has looked better. If anything, I would expect a low-scoring game just with the Badgers' struggles. Iowa's a pretty solid defensive team, and offensively, they're going to try to run the ball and so on. It should be kind of a low-scoring slugfest, if you will. So moving on to the other big game in the Big Ten, it involves Illinois. They're 2-4, rivalry game here against Northwestern. The Wildcats are 5-1. They've already wrapped up their spot in the Big Ten title game next week. I expect Northwestern to get it done. Illinois kind of had an up and down season. They looked really bad in their opener against Wisconsin. They made some corrections. They've won a few games that they weren't expected to. Interesting enough there. But all of that being said, Northwestern is very good defensively. I don't think the Illini are going to be much of a problem for them. They're going in at a 14.5-point favorite right now. I expect Northwestern to get it done. Again, Illinois has been a little bit up and down, not really sure which effort you're going to get out of them. Is it the one, that one on the road and took care of, Nebraska a few weeks ago as a massive underdog? Not really sure. So it'll be interesting, to see how that goes. Yeah, I think you're right. I think Iowa will win with defense, if I had to make a pick in that game. But Northwestern Illinois, I'm hammering the Wildcats, straight up to win that game. The 14.5-point spread, if it was 14 or 13.5, I'd feel a lot better about it, to be honest with you. But Northwestern shouldn't have any problems. They should be in. So, moving along to the other few games that we have in the top 25 this week, we've got one in the Big 12 featuring Oklahoma State, who is currently number 22 in the College Football Playoff Committee rankings. They're 6-3. They're at Baylor. They're going in as a 5-point favorite. Baylor played played Oklahoma last week. A little bit tougher than I think most figured. I believe the final was 27-12, if I remember correctly, or something along those lines. So it was a big spread. Baylor was able to cover it. They're a team, they're 2-6, but I think they're better than their 2-6 record overall. That being said, I like Oklahoma State to kind of bounce back. They've had a rough go as of late, but I think they'll be able to bounce back and they'll be able to win this game with defense. Maybe a lower scoring game. I could see this being a 20-13 type of game, 24-14, 24-17, something along those lines. But I believe Oklahoma State covers the 5. They get the win, and they finish up 7-3 for the regular season. So moving along out here to the West Coast, of course, there is one Pac-12 game featuring a ranked team, and that, of course, is USC. USC, they're 4-0 on the year. They finally got a big win last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me. They were off last week. They're playing UCLA, the big rivalry game there. UCLA is 3-2. Again, kind of an up and down season so far for the Bruins. It seems like the Trojans found their footing there in their last game. So I expect USC to win this game. They are going off right now as a 3-point favorite. They are the road team for this one. I like the Trojans, just like I said. I think they found their footing. UCLA, it's been up and down. It's been some good performances mixed in with some blah in there. So, again, I think USC gets it done. Rivalry game, anything could happen, but I liked how the Trojans looked in their last game, and I think they're going to build off of that, and they'll get it done. I think it'll be a competitive game, within 10 points for sure, but I think USC covers the 3. So that's my pick there. One other game in the Pac-12, it's featuring Colorado. They're at home against Utah. Utah is 1-2. They've had some problems just getting games in. The Buffaloes are 4-0. They are the other unbeaten team in the Pac-12. They jumped into the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings last week at number 21. So they're in. Colorado's looked pretty good. They're kind of flying under the radar right now. They've been a good team. I scratched my head a little bit at the line. Utah is coming in as a 2-point underdog, just 2 points. The Utes have struggled, though, this year to look good, to find consistency. Colorado has looked pretty good. So, again, a little surprised with that line, guys. But ultimately, I think Colorado is going to get it done, and they're going to go to 5-0. So my pick there is with the Buffaloes. Again, a little tricky, like I said, with that point spread. You kind of wonder what's going on. But, Willingham is a great coach for the Utes, so maybe Vegas figures this might be the week where they've kind of corrected some things and are kind of able to get back to playing that Utah brand of football we've seen the last couple of years. But right now, I like Colorado. They've looked good, and, I'm going to take the Buffaloes in that one. So moving along, we've got 3 other games this week involving the top 25. One more involving a Power 5 opponent. That is the Miami Hurricanes. They come in ranked number 10. I've got the Hurricanes at number 10. The College Football Playoff Committee has them at number 10. They are taking on North Carolina. The Tar Heels coming in at number 17 in both the College Football Playoff Committee rankings and my top 25 this week as well. Tar Heels are 7-3. They've been a pretty solid team for most of the year. They've had a few hiccups. They struggled against Wake Forest earlier in the season and were able to erase a massive deficit there to come back and win. They did lose at Florida State in an ugly game, and the Seminoles are just not a good team this year, bottom of the barrel in the ACC. So they've got an ugly loss on the resume, but that being said, they've also picked up a couple quality wins. They absolutely blew out in-state rival NC State. NC State is 7-3 now on the season. They played Notre Dame pretty tough a few weeks ago in a 31-17 home loss. So North Carolina, this is what they like to do. They like to run the football and kind of get after it defensively. They've got some shortcomings, but they can make up with it. They've got, an explosive type of offense through the run game, opens up some big pass plays for them. But that's the key really for them. If you take away the run, North Carolina struggles mightily. And other teams that can run the football can kind of give them some problems as well. But, De'Ara King, he's the key. He's been having a great season for Miami at quarterback. He's athletic. He brings a lot of things to the table. Now, there is some COVID issues with him. I'm not sure if he's going to be cleared for the game or not. We'll have to check back in for that. But the Hurricanes are going off as a 3-point favorite right now. I like Miami in this game. I think they'll get it done. Again, North Carolina's just been a little bit too inconsistent for me from week to week. So, I like the Hurricanes in this one. I think they get to 9-1 and are going to finish right behind Notre Dame and Clemson in the ACC this year. So, hats off to the Hurricanes. They've had a turnaround season this year. I think they get it done and they continue to roll along. Although Mac Brown's North Carolina team will give them a test. That should be one of the games of the day tomorrow. I expect that to be a good one. As far as the point spread, the Hurricanes are a 3-point favorite. I would stick money line with this one, guys. I mean, this could even be a 1 or 2 point game, field goal at the end. I do expect a close one, but if you can go Miami money line, I think they'll get it done. So that leaves us with our final 2 top 25 games that are left for tomorrow, and they involve actually a couple teams that played each other last week, playing in separate games. So Coastal Carolina, who scored a huge win last week at home over previously 9-0 and ranked number 8 BYU. That game went right down to the wire. It was an exciting game. 26-21, Coastal Carolina hung on to win that game. BYU wide receiver was tackled literally at the 1.5 yard line as time expired on a little crossing route there as they tried to get it in the end zone on the last play of the game. So it was a great game. Both teams played well, in my opinion. Coastal Carolina gets a massive bump to the resume. They flopped spots with BYU in the college football playoff ranking committee. They got them up to 13 this week. I am more impressed with Coastal Carolina than the playoff committee. I think they're being undervalued right now. They're 10-0. That is now a home win over an unbeaten team that was ranked in the top 10 at the time. They also have a road win over a top 20 ranked Louisiana team, Louisiana Lafayette, whose only loss is to Coastal Carolina. They won that game on the road, so you've got a road victory over a top 20 ranked team, who, by the way, Louisiana started the year by beating Iowa State at Iowa State 31-14, and the Cyclones just finished atop the Big 12 heading into the Big 12 title game next week. So, that Sun Belt, not exactly a weak conference. Arkansas State is in that conference as well. They beat Kansas State on the road to start the year, and Kansas State went ahead and beat Oklahoma a couple weeks after that. So it's not the same Sun Belt. I've been banging this point home all year long. It's a better conference. Coastal Carolina also has a couple of wins outside of the Sun Belt as well. One over Big 12 opponent Kansas. Granted, the Jayhawks have not been good, but you give them credit for scheduling that game and getting it done. But anyway, Coastal Carolina is at Troy to finish up their regular season. They're looking to get to 11-0, guys. Troy is 5-5. They've had a little bit of an up and down year. Carolina is going in at a 13.5 point favorite. I like Coastal Carolina a lot. Will they have a letdown after the big win over BYU last week? I don't think so. They've been able to kind of keep it going from week to week this year and have been one of the more consistent teams in all of college football, aside from the 4 or 5 at the top all season long. So I expect them to win to get to 11-0, and I expect them to cover the spread. I think they win by 14 to 20 points tomorrow. Troy's a quality team. But that being said, they've been up and down as well, and I think Coastal Carolina is more athletic and is going to give them some problems. So the confidence factor should be there, especially after beating BYU last week. I've got the Chanticleers at number 9 right now. I believe they deserve to be in the top 10. I still continue to think Georgia's being overvalued. And if you flip those two around, you put Georgia at 13, Coastal Carolina at 9, I think you've got it right. So that being said, again, another opportunity for them. If they win and get to 11-0, they've got the Sun Belt Championship game next week. It should be a rematch with Louisiana Lafayette. Should be a great game. But I like Coastal Carolina to get it done. They've been great. And you know what? They deserve at least a mention in the college football, playoff conversation. Although some things would have to happen next week to open up a path to even, kind of consider them for a Final Four spot. But they should be in the conversation. They've earned that. Their resume, merits that for this season. So, the other game that I want to touch on then features BYU. The Cougars will be back in action. They'll be looking to get to double-digit wins. They're 9-1. They lost for the first time last week, that game at Coastal Carolina. That game was scheduled on short notice. That game wasn't even scheduled the weekend prior. So I give the Cougars credit for taking that game, for going across the country and playing on the road against an unbeaten team and probably the best opponent they could grab here. They didn't get it done. They played well. It was a good game. I didn't penalize them too much. The BYU did drop out of the top 10. I've got them at 15 after that loss, right behind Northwestern. So they are in action against San Diego State, and this should actually be a pretty good game. This one's a little bit underrated, in my opinion. Might be one of the games of the day. San Diego State has one of the best defenses in the country. They are extremely tough to score points against, even to just consistently move the ball. Their shortcomings have been on offense. They're 4-3. The games they've won, they've looked pretty dominant. They've won with defense and, the run game and so on and so forth. But they do lack some explosion on offense and playmakers. BYU certainly has the better playmakers, but this will be the toughest defense that the Cougars have faced all season long, including last week's trip to Coastal Carolina. So, I expect this one to be a good game. BYU is a 16-point favorite right now. I just think San Diego State's defense is going to be good enough to, keep this within a couple scores. I still like the Cougars to win the game comfortably, but I like them more in the 11 to 14 point range. So, if you can jump on San Diego State, if this line moves at all to 17 or 18, definitely jump on San Diego State if you can get the extra point or two. Because I think they will cover for sure a 17 or 18 point spread. I do see it being a little bit closer than a 3-score game. So again, just behind their defense and the style of football that they play. So that wraps up the previews for the 11 top 25 games that we have going tomorrow. Of course, we have some notable games that won't be going on tomorrow involving some teams in the top 25. The biggest one is Ohio State, Michigan. That is the first time the game, as it is referred to, will not be played since 1917, I believe it is. Guys, Michigan's just having some problems with COVID within the program. Let's be honest, this would have been probably a slaughter fest anyway in favor of Ohio State. Michigan struggled all season long. They just struggled, and both sides of the ball. It's probably the worst Michigan team Harbaugh's had. The questions around the team, around his future and everything, it probably would have been a shellacking here by the Buckeyes, who, by the way, have dominated that series over the last 20 years. They've won 18 of the last 20. So it hasn't been much of a rivalry over the last 2 decades, and I don't know, had that game been played, if we would have had too much of a game anyway. So, of course, the Big Ten went ahead and adjusted their rules midweek this week to allow the Buckeyes to be able to participate in the Big Ten title game against Northwestern. They adjusted their rule where you had to play an average of 6 games, would have been the average to make it to the title game. Of course, Ohio State only got 5 in with the cancellation of this game. So, but I think they made the right move. Ohio State beat Indiana during the head-to-head game. While I think Indiana actually outplayed them in that game, Ohio State won the game. They've got that win on their resume. So even if they would have played and somehow lost to Michigan tomorrow, they still would have been the representative in the Big Ten title game. So I think the conference made the right decision. The playoff committee still has them at number 4. So I'd like to, and I want to see that game. I want to see what Ohio State can do against Northwestern. I think you could argue that the Buckeyes have yet to really play anybody that has even what you can consider to be a pretty good defense. So, they did struggle against Indiana. Justin Fields threw 3 picks. Yeah, they scored 42 points, but they turned the ball over and, had a few of those momentum plays broke Indiana's way. We might have had a different outcome. So, I expect that one to be a good one next week between Northwestern and Ohio State. And like I said, interested to see what the Buckeyes can do against a very good defense like the Wildcats. So the other big one, it was Texas A&M, who happens to be the number 5 team. So Ohio State not playing, either is A&M due to COVID. They were scheduled to host Ole Miss. Again, probably would have took care of business. Ole Miss, one of the, lesser defenses in all of college football this year. They have just been pretty awful on that side of the ball. So I don't think A&M would have had problems. They're a more physical team. They would have been able to get it done. But again, that game was postponed. So A&M will ride it out and see what happens. I'm not sure if they're going to try to reschedule that game, maybe even try to get it in next week while we have conference title games going on, just so they could get another game in. I'm not entirely sure. It wasn't outright canceled yet, just postponed. So we'll keep an eye on that and what's going on there. So the one other game was Cincinnati, again, unable to play again this week. They were supposed to play Tulsa, who continues to move up the college football playoff rankings. The Golden Wave is number 21 this week, but these two teams are already set to play each other next week in the American Athletic Conference game, so title game, excuse me. So not really much of a point to play this one this week when both teams are already in that one and still dealing with the remnants of some COVID issues. So they'll try to get healthy so they can make sure they play that game next week. Cincinnati hasn't played since November 21st. So, the Bearcats have kind of went down a few spots in the rankings because of that. I still have them at number 7, right behind Florida and A&M. They still might be able to work their way into the conversation as far as nabbing that 4th and final playoff spot. A win over Tulsa next week, and if they can look good in it and win that game in dominant fashion, that would be a big boost to their resume, and then you kind of see how the other conference title games fall. So, that's what we're looking at there. To touch base on the college football playoff committee briefly before we wrap it up here, guys, and their rankings and how the playoff is looking. I said it last week. It hasn't changed. I think Notre Dame and Alabama are going to be in regardless of the outcomes of their conference title games next week. I don't see Notre Dame getting penalized if they were to lose to a fully healthy Clemson team. And Alabama, if they were to lose to Florida, again, a healthy, good Florida team, that would be their only loss. I don't see the committee dropping them out. So I think those two are going to be in. We've got 2 other spots that'll be up for grabs. So I will be back again next Friday previewing all of the conference title games, giving you my picks, and I will run down all of the different scenarios for the college football playoff and how the outcomes of those conference title games will mean for the college football playoff and, the different scenarios that we could have depending on those outcomes. So as of right now, you've got Alabama, you've got Notre Dame, you've got Clemson and Ohio State, but A&M is very much alive, guys. Iowa State is alive as well, with the playoff committee moving them up the last couple weeks. Even, Coastal Carolina has a shot. Cincinnati is definitely in the conversation as well. And then, if Florida can upset Alabama next week, Florida would certainly punch their ticket as well. So there's a quick rundown on the college football playoff as it looks, the standings heading into tomorrow's games. Again, I am Sports Guy Chris. You can find me on Instagram, Sports Guy Chris, YouTube, and I have a blog going on Scorum, SCORUM, and very exciting stuff. Last week, launched a podcast with a good buddy of mine, Mikey. You can find him on Instagram at Mikey Likes It. It's called the Balls and Beards Podcast. If you have a chance, check us out, guys. We are on Anchor. We're on Spotify. We're on Pocket Cast. We're on Google. We're on all of your major listening platforms. So please check us out. Give us a listen. We've started off covering some NBA news. Next week, we'll be jumping in and talking NFL playoffs, going through the standings, giving you our picks for the playoffs. And then our following episode will be a full NBA preview for the upcoming season. That's around the corner already, tipping off on December 22nd. So again, the Balls and Beards podcast, very excited to get that up and running. We've got 2 episodes in the books. Weekly show. Please, if you have a chance, check us out. Again, we're on all the major listening platforms. Would appreciate your support there as well. Again, a shout out to the Spotlight Sports Network, Jake at the Snake Sports Talk Show. Again, I'm Sports Guy Chris. I appreciate you guys jumping on with me today. Enjoy all of the action tomorrow. And again, I will be back next week running down those conference title games, giving you my picks, going through the playoff scenarios as we inch closer to the end of the season. Enjoy all the games tomorrow, guys. Have a great weekend, and I will see you again next week. Sports Guy Chris. Take care, guys.